There's two aspects of CCM's release schedule that, despite it having a lot of criticisms from a lot of people online, that actually work for beer leaguers. The first is kind of less important, and that is CCM is constantly reinventing, changing, fixing things that may have not worked in previous generations. For example, the Trigger 4 was an excellent stick and pretty much loved by all, and then they kind of pushed the limit on weight with the Trigger 5 at like 365, and it had massive durability issues. The blade was super light, nobody liked it. But that only took like 10 months to kind of turn over, and CCM rectified their mistakes. So it's important to understand that that's the first one. But for beer leaguers and rec hockey players who are buying their own sticks and kind of looking for maybe one stick, or if they have to, a replacement via warranty, or they get a second stick during the year, is CCM's release schedule is actually perfect because the Trigger 8 just came out, and progress can only be so linear and so exponential. Sure, we're going to talk about the blade a little bit in this video, but at the end of the day, the Trigger 7 Pro is an excellent stick. Go watch that review if you haven't, but now it's on sale. And this video is really going to be focused on, although the Trigger 8 has marginal improvements, my advice right now is if you're a Trigger person, go pick up Trigger 7s and 6s on sale because they are excellently priced right now, and the upgrade of the 8 is minor. I also find it super interesting how CCM, although they are my top stick company right now in terms of all of their lines being excellent, is I do find that they remove and add features that they've had in the past to kind of give the illusion of improvements. Despite CCM being the best stick company right now in terms of all three of their lines beating every other stick company, they aren't without criticism. And I find that they'll bring things back. So for example, on the Trigger 8 here, where we have ribs and kind of an interesting weave texture pattern for grip, well, that's shown up on their sticks many times in the past. So it just wasn't on the 7, but it was on the 6. So it's very interesting how they do that. The FT Ghost is very similar. It has ribs now on the underside for grip, but the 3 and 4 did not. So very interesting how they do that to kind of show progression, but actually silently remove it during different iterations of generations. So that's kind of where we're at with the 8, and we'll get into that a little more, but just something to be aware of because you'll actually probably find that the blade feel actually showed up on the Trigger 2 and 3 PMT and then kind of disappeared, and then now it's kind of making its way back. I also just wanted to touch on one tiny small caveat because I know a lot of hockey YouTube channels get this, and I get it too in DMs and sometimes in comments, is why don't I personally review, say, lower end sticks like the Trigger 8 non-pro or the one below that? At the end of the day is I'm personally buying products that I will use because I enjoy them and I like testing the top end hockey gear. But at the end of the day, guys, like the Trigger 8 is gonna perform really well. Just like the Trigger 8 Pro, it's just gonna be like a little bit heavier. The only difference as well is that I just don't personally believe that mid-tier sticks, say team sticks, have any place in our game right now because you can buy pro stocks for the same price and you can buy last year's models, which are the top end sticks, for the same price as say the team stick or the model below. So I just don't feel there's much relevance to lower end sticks. I'll give you one quick example before we get into the review. A friend of mine, a teammate, was asking me about the ASV 570 and said, is this stick worth picking up? It was $130. Well, I quickly jumped on to Hockey Stick Man, Pro Stock Hockey, Sideline Swap, and I found top end sticks for that price. So why would I pick up a 470 gram stick with basically zero technology that doesn't have great pop when you can get all those things in different areas? So that's why and I'm gonna say probably most YouTube channels don't actually review mid-tier sticks. Just something to keep in mind. There's plenty of deals out there. On to the review. We are out here testing sticks. Obviously, this is just a big session, but I've used all of these sticks in games, and this is just the final verdicts. Got my Trigger 8 Pro here. We're gonna run through all my ratings, where it ends up on the stick tier list, etc., and what I feel if this is worth upgrading or not. So it should be interesting. Let's rock it. Well, triggers are a shooting stick, which everybody knows, and honestly, it's been a great shooting stick since the 6th, and the 5 was not so much, and the 4 was great. So overall, triggers are built for shooting, and there's a reason. Oh, there it is. There's that nice release. Smooth. Yep, that's the one. Interesting enough, for a low kick stick, the reason that I like the triggers is because it actually does every shot well, not like the LX2 Pro, not like the Wrecker, not like the Hazardous. I actually have a bomb of a shot, slap shot, I'll put it in from Live Barm, with the Trigger8 Pro, so you can slap shot with it, great release, etc. So that's why I really enjoy it. I mean, geez, look at that. Look at that release. There's a reason that I scored a bunch with this and not the LX Pro. Like, it's night and day. Night and day. And you can tell it's a low kick stick. So here's what I mean with shooting with the trigger. Bar down. It's miles per hour better than the LX Pro. Wow. Woo! It's like when you're talking about the triggers here, like you could just feel the power difference and you could see it. And of course, when you're beating goalies more, that's the biggest thing. The LX Pro, I could not beat goalies. But now with the trigger, I can beat goalies. Like that has a lot of power. Bullseye. One more. Quick shot. 3 in a row. So with shooting with the trigger, it's not quite as powerful as a mid kick, but because it can do all shots, 4.5 out of 5. I like shooting with the trigger. It's very consistent. You can feel the kick point. Love the power that you get on all the different shots. Now in terms of release, now this is where the trigger, I don't think it's really beat by anybody. The Wrecker, the Agent is right there, but every other low kick stick does not quite have the release, and it's all about the taper on this trigger for sure. So shooting with the Trigger8 is the same as the 7, it's the same as the 6. I do not see any differences in shooting with those sticks, and really they seem to just be upgrading smaller things, looking for improvements like the blades, etc. Now, shooting with the trigger is the second best power in a low kick in all shots that you can have, and far exceeds the QR5 Pro, the Wrecker Element 1 from Sherwood, you know, Sherwood's original M90, the True Hazardous, etc. So this is the second best, very, very, very slightly behind the Agent in terms of all power, but of course you get better durability in this stick. This stick is far more versatile than most low kicks, and that's why I prefer it for shooting if I'm using a low kick or the Agent, because at the end of the day, I can slap shot, I can wrist shot, and I can toe drag release and snapshot with this, and you have power in all aspects. Shooting is, of course, the biggest thing with a low kick stick, followed by release. Now, if you're looking for the best release and shot power, I still believe the Agent is slightly better, but you really gotta take into account the durability. So this is probably your next best option when it comes to shooting for all round in a low kicker. So with the trigger on release, you can do my style shooting and it's excellent. I mean, look at that release there. Quick shot. Off the toe. Or you can come down and get that toe drag release. A couple more with the release just for fun. Let's do some off leg. A little bit of a drag and wrister there. Not quite Bedard. Top Chad. Let's see if I can get a full punch out here. Nah, I screwed it up. Now, release between the Agent and the trigger, are very, very similar. So it's very hard to tell if one is better than the other. So we're just going to say that they're tied. But this boasts the best release out of any low kick stick. There is no lag. There is nothing that says this is slower compared to the Wrecker, the QR5, and the Hazardous, etc. The other thing that I like about this taper is it just feels different. You can still feel it flexing, whereas a lot of low kick sticks, you can't really do that. So I prefer this stick over many other low kicks that I've tested over the years just because of the taper. And it hasn't changed in probably 4 or 5 years now, but that's okay because it works. So unless they could find another way to make this taper either better or improved, I think you're going to be stuck with this for quite some time. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's doing the job. Okay, I'm going to try to do this explanation really quick and talk fast. I believe that the trigger is that much better of a releasing stick with power for all shots because CCM builds their low kick sticks in the trigger line with a very, very soft lower hosel and taper area. I personally believe that CCM, and I have no way to prove this, is their sticks are built with their hybrid is soft here, then stiff, then soft. And this area is softer than other manufacturers, which allows more flex and more kick. Same with the Trigger8 Pro, and of course the triggers in general. I also personally think that sticks like the Novium with a stiff area here are harder to load, and the stored energy is higher up and requires more effort and more power. So any stick that has a stiff taper and hosel area is not going to perform as well as a very soft loading lower area. Something that I've noticed on kind of the triggers and CCMs in general. Stick handling is not really my game. You know, I'm not a dangler, I'm not a toe dragger. I definitely don't dangle. I'm more of a shooter and a bit of a speed type of player. But when it comes to the triggers, they tried to fix it with this new dual core thing. As you can see, they have like an insert there on the blade. I can show another one at the house, it's not a big deal. And they've definitely improved the puck feel here, but what they did lose was a little bit of balance, and I know I've heard people complain about it. You know, I don't notice it 100%. It's just not quite as nicely balanced as the 7, but you do get a little bit more puck feel. Grip is good. The feel of the shaft is good. You have nice ribs everywhere. So from a feel, weight, and balance perspective, it is still heavier though. Again, like a 390 gram stick. Why can't we stick to, you know, 375, etc., and keep the durability? The FT6 Pro, perfect weight versus durability. So I'm going to go with 4 out of 5 for feel, weight, and balance, but it's only because the blade is a little bit unbalanced, and I wish the weight was a little bit lower. Because the release on the Trigger8 is so good, coupled with the versatility and different shots, it is hard to beat. And of course, the Agent being kind of, you know, unique specialty style stick, this is definitely easier to find. Now, with the new blade for the feel, weight, and balance, here's kind of where I don't think it's worth upgrading over the Trigger 7, because the blade feel really is only slightly better, but everything else remains the same. The weight is the same, the shooting is the same, the release is the same, the durability remains the same because the weight hasn't changed. So I'm a little bit disappointed that they haven't taken the Trigger8 to the FT6 weight and durability. You know, low kick sticks are generally lighter than their mid kick and hybrid powder or counterparts, but in this particular case, they aren't. So why this remained at 390 grams for a full length is kind of beyond me. And that means that my recommendation is to just stick with Trigger 7s, because they're going to be cheaper and you're going to be able to find them for probably the next 6 months, $100, $150 less depending on where you live. And it's going to be pretty much the exact same stick as this. A little bit of blade feel, not really worth it from a feel, weight, and balance perspective. Trigger 7 is just fine. In terms of durability, the triggers and CCM in general have shown pretty good durability lately. Everybody breaks sticks. Everybody puts in the comment section, these aren't catalysts. These aren't true sticks. They will break, but the difference is generally you get good performance and a little bit long lasting out of them. Now, the one thing that I don't recommend with triggers or CCMs in general is for this reason, and I could show you some more at the house. It's hard to see, but this is one day at center, and it seems to kind of delaminate. Now, is that a durability issue? CCM has had chipping issues for quite some time. I've never noticed that it's a problem, but I'll tell you right now, if you get a good chunk in there, so I wouldn't play center with this personally, but from a durability standpoint, it's still okay. It's definitely a 4 out of 5 in terms of durability because it is also a heavier stick at 390 grams. Because they haven't changed anything in terms of the weight, the durability, in my opinion, remained exactly the same as the Trigger 7. You always have chipping issues, as you can see here. I generally wouldn't play center with CCM sticks because they chip like crazy, and I just don't have enough data to say that those chips, affect long-term durability. Hard to say. All sticks break. We talk about that all the time, but durability on these sticks has vastly improved and do not have manufacturing defects like, say, the Trigger 5 line or AS3 line or FT3 line had actual manufacturing defects where it always broke in particular points. These will break with slashes and lots of shots and all that type of stuff, but at 390 grams, the durability here on the Trigger 8 remains decent for a high-end stick, but again, might as well just get a Trigger 7 then. All of those things combined, of course, bring me to the final thoughts and my recommendations on the Trigger 8. And my recommendation is if you're a trigger person and you love triggers, then I would just continue rocking 6s and 7s as you can find them cheap and on sale until they're completely gone in the market. Then you can upgrade to the Trigger 8. And by then the Trigger 9 will be on the dock and you'll get these cheap. It's just not worth an upgrade for $100 more if you can find Trigger 7s or 6s for blade only. If this had dropped weight like big time, like the FT6, I would definitely recommend it, but it just didn't. So overall, if you put a 7 on here and it was black, I honestly don't think most people would notice the difference in blade feel. It's very slight. Thanks for watching, guys.